Have you ever heard one of those big claims that says, if you were born before 1960, Social Security owes you another $1,870 a month, and thought, hold on a second, is that really true? Or is somebody just throwing out a giant number to get my attention? Here's the honest answer right up front. No, there is not one automatic rule that gives every person born before 1960 an extra $1,870 a month. But yes, some older Americans really are missing that kind of money or something close to it because they are on the wrong benefit or they never ask Social Security to compare all the benefits they may qualify for. That is exactly why I make these videos. I want older adults to have clear, simple information so they do not lose money just because the rules were confusing, the paperwork was annoying, or somebody gave them old advice that no longer fits their situation. And I know there are really two kinds of people watching right now. The first person has had a nagging feeling for years. Maybe you started benefits a while back, maybe your spouse passed away, maybe you went through a divorce years ago, and in the back of your mind you have been wondering, did I ever check this the right way? The second person just had a little alarm bell go off. Maybe you saw a headline, heard something from a friend at church, or watched another video that made it sound like a magic birth year jackpot. And now you are thinking, wait, before I ignore this, I should at least make sure I'm not leaving real money on the table. If that sounds like you, stay with me, because the hidden truth here is actually pretty simple. Most people do not miss money because there is some secret government vault with their name on it. They miss money because Social Security has different buckets of benefits, and many people only think about one bucket. They look at their own retirement benefit and stop there. But depending on your life, there may also be a spouse benefit, a divorced spouse benefit, or a survivor benefit. And those are not all handled the same way. That is the part people miss. Not because they are careless, not because anybody is foolish, but because the rules changed over time. Some advice only applies to certain birth dates, and many people never sit down and compare one benefit path against another. I'm glad you're here. I spend a lot of time turning these money rules into plain English, because this stuff should not require a law degree and a pot of aspirin to understand. So here's what we're going to do together. We're going to clear up what born before 1960 really means. We're going to talk about the benefit types that can raise a monthly check. We're going to go through the mistake people make with old filing advice. And then we're going to get to the biggest area where some seniors truly can uncover a large monthly increase. And if a phone call, a website, or certain documents matter, I'll point you in the right direction in plain language. First, let's clear this up. Being born before 1960 does not, by itself, unlock a special monthly payment. There is no simple rule that says, cross this birth year line and here comes your extra $1,870. What being born before 1960 does mean is that you are in the age group where these decisions matter right now. You are either already in your full retirement age zone, very close to it, or past the early filing years when the wrong move can lock in a smaller amount. So the real issue is not your birth year by itself. The real issue is whether you are claiming on the best record available to you. Think of it this way. Social Security is not just one number floating in the air. There can be more than one number connected to you. There is your own retirement benefit based on your work record. There may be a spouse benefit based on your husband's or wife's work record. There may be a divorced spouse benefit if that marriage lasted long enough and you meet the rules. And there may be a survivor benefit if your spouse or ex-spouse has died. Now let's use a simple example. Say your own retirement benefit is $900 a month, but your husband's full retirement benefit is $3,740 a month. A spouse benefit at full retirement age can be as much as half of that worker's full retirement amount. Half of $3,740 is $1,870. That does not mean you get your $900 plus another full $1,870. This is where many people get tripped up. In a basic spouse situation, Social Security does not stack those checks like pancakes. They generally pay your own benefit first, then add enough spouse benefit to bring you up to the higher amount if you qualify. So in this example, your total monthly amount could be $1,870, not $2,770. That is still a very big difference. It is $970 more each month than the $900 check you thought was the whole story. Who does this apply to? Mostly married people and some divorced people who qualify under the rules. and the amount depends on your age when you claim, because taking a spouse benefit early can reduce it. So here is your action step for this first part. Do not ask only one question, ask two. What is my benefit on my own record, and what is my benefit as a spouse or divorced spouse at my current age? If you have an online Social Security account, start there. If your case involves more than your own record, make a call and ask for a side-by-side comparison instead of assuming the first number you see is the whole picture. Now let's turn to a different angle because this is where a lot of confusion comes from. Many people have heard an older piece of advice that goes something like this. Just file for the spouse benefit first. Let your own retirement benefit grow, then switch later. Years ago, that was a real strategy for some people. But it does not work for everybody, and this is where birth dates matter in a very specific way. That spouse-only filing option is not for everyone born before 1960. It only still applies to people who were born before January 2nd, 1954, and who have reached full retirement age. That is a much smaller group than everyone born before 1960. So if you were born in 1955, 1956, 1957, 1958, or 1959, that old advice may not fit you at all. Let me make that real. Say Linda was born in 1956. She has her own retirement benefit, and she also may qualify for a spouse benefit on her husband's record. She hears from a friend, take the spouse check now and let your own grow until 70. Sounds nice, very tidy, very appealing. But for Linda, that old move is not generally available the way people think. If she is eligible for both benefits and files, Social Security will usually treat that filing as filing for both. Then they pay the higher amount she is eligible for, not one now and the other later just because she wants that sequence. That is why old coffee shop advice can cost people money. The advice may have been true for somebody else. It may even have been true 10 years ago, but that does not make it true for you. And let me say this in the kindest possible way. If your eyes go a little foggy when someone starts throwing around terms and dates, that is normal. This is not simple because old rules and current rules get mixed together all the time. So if this is clearing up something that has bothered you, stay with me. There's another piece here that matters. If you are eligible for both your own retirement benefit and a spouse benefit, Social Security generally looks at both and pays the higher amount you qualify for. That is why it is so important not to build your whole retirement plan around something you heard from a neighbor who retired under a different rule. Who does this second point apply to? It applies most of all to people who have been told, don't worry, just take your spouse benefit first, without anyone checking their exact birth date and filing status. So here is your action step for this section. If anyone has told you to file on your spouse's record first and switch later, stop before you do anything and ask one direct question. Does that old spouse-only filing option actually apply to my birth date? That one question can save you from building a plan on outdated advice. Now let's talk about a very common mistake, and this one shows up in living rooms all over the country. A lot of divorced people assume that once the marriage ended, any Social Security help tied to that marriage ended too. That is not always true. If you were married for at least 10 years before the divorce became final, you may be able to qualify on your ex-spouse's record. Not everybody will qualify. Not everybody will get more. And if you are currently married, that changes the picture. But the big point is this. Divorce does not automatically mean nothing available. Here's a simple example. Let's say your own retirement benefit is $1,050 a month. Your ex-spouse's full retirement benefit is $2,400 a month. Half of that is $1,200. If you qualify for a divorced spouse benefit and you're at the right claiming age, your total monthly amount could be brought up to $1,200. Now that is not a giant jackpot. It is not one of those flashy internet headlines, but it is still an extra $150 a month. That is $1,800 a year. For a lot of seniors, $1,800 a year is groceries, prescriptions, car insurance, or some breathing room at the end of the month. And remember, sometimes the gap is much bigger than $150. It depends on your own work record and your ex-spouse's record. The reason people miss this is easy to understand. Divorce is painful. Years pass. Names change. People move. And many folks simply never think to revisit Social Security after the papers are signed and life moves on. If that is you, please hear me clearly. If you had a marriage that lasted 10 years or more, it is worth checking, not assuming, checking. And just to keep this grounded, here's the part people often miss on the other side, too. A divorced spouse benefit does not mean your ex loses money from their own check because you asked about yours. It also does not mean everybody divorced for 10 years gets a giant increase. It means you may have a right to a better benefit calculation than the one you are living with now. That is a big difference. So here is your action step for this part. If you were married 10 years or longer, write down the marriage dates, the divorce date, and your ex-spouse's basic information if you still have it. Then contact Social Security and ask them to review whether you qualify as a divorced spouse and what that amount would be at your current age. And if you know somebody who always says, well, I'm divorced, so none of that applies to me, don't nudge them too hard just yet. Because the next part is where the biggest missed money often shows up. This next point is the strongest one in the whole video. If you are widowed, widowered, or a surviving divorced spouse, there may be a survivor benefit available to you. And in some cases, this is exactly where that big monthly difference people talk about can become real. Not for everyone, but for some people, absolutely. A survivor benefit is different from a spouse benefit. This is important. In many cases, a surviving spouse can receive a monthly amount based on the deceased spouse's record. The amount depends on when the survivor claims. Claimed early, it can be reduced, wait until full survivor retirement age, and it can be as much as the full amount the deceased spouse was receiving or was entitled to receive. Now let's put real numbers on the table. Say Ruth is getting $1,130 a month on her own retirement record. Her husband had a benefit of $3,000 a month before he died. Ruth assumed her own check was just her check, and that was that. But if Ruth qualifies for a survivor benefit and is at full survivor retirement age, she may be able to receive the higher survivor amount instead of staying on her smaller own retirement amount. What is the difference between $3,000 and $1,130? It is $1,870 a month. That is where a number like the one in this video title can actually be real. Not because every person born before 1960 gets a mystery bonus, but because a widow, widower, or surviving divorced spouse may be sitting on the wrong benefit and never realize the gap could be that large. And this is one of the saddest money mistakes I see because it often happens during grief. A spouse dies. There is paperwork. There are bills. There are phone calls. There is exhaustion. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the surviving spouse may not fully understand what benefit choices should be reviewed. Some people assume Social Security will automatically place them on the best long-term path. Some people never ask. Some people think survivor benefits and retirement benefits are the same thing. They are not. And here's another helpful piece. Survivor benefits are treated differently from the regular spouse benefit filing rule we just talked about. In some cases, a widow or widower can start one type of benefit and switch later to the other, if that makes sense. For example, someone may start a survivor benefit and later switch to their own retirement benefit when it has grown more, or they may need Social Security to compare both paths carefully. That is why widows and widowers should not settle for a quick, rushed understanding. This is one of those times when you want the full comparison. Here is the timing problem. If you check this in time, you may be able to move from a much smaller monthly amount to a much larger one, or at least choose the order of benefits more wisely. If you never check, you can spend month after month living on less than you should. Not because anyone stole from you, not because there is a secret fund, but because the higher survivor amount was never properly reviewed or claimed. And one practical note here really matters. If you need to ask about survivor benefits, do not assume you can handle it the same way as a regular online retirement filing. Survivor benefits are not something you apply for online. You need to call Social Security or contact your local office, and when you do, have your information ready, along with any marriage, divorce, or death records that apply. If you know your late spouse's or ex-spouse's Social Security information, have that ready too. So here is your action step for the most important section in this whole video. If your spouse or ex-spouse has died, call Social Security and ask them to compare your own retirement benefit with any survivor benefit you may qualify for, both now and later. Do not ask, "Do I get anything?" Ask, "What are my options? What are the amounts? And which path gives me the higher lifetime benefit?" That wording matters. Let me pause for a second and say this gently. If you have stayed with me this far, you are doing exactly what smart people do. You are not chasing fairy tales. You are checking the details before they cost you money. That is the whole game here. Now, let me give you 2 bonus points for sticking with me because these can save people from very expensive confusion. The first bonus is a helpful strategy. If you are a widow or widower, do not ask Social Security for just one number. Ask for both paths to be compared. Ask what happens if you take the survivor benefit first and your own retirement later. Ask what happens if you take your own retirement first and the survivor benefit later, if that is available in your situation. You do not need to know the perfect answer before you call. You just need to know enough to ask for the comparison. That is a gift to your future self. Because too many people hear one number, write it on a scrap of paper, and assume the case is closed. It may not be closed at all. The second bonus is a warning. Be very careful with the words retroactive benefits if you are already past full retirement age and have not started your own retirement benefit yet. In some cases, Social Security can pay benefits for up to 6 months before the month you apply. That can sound wonderful, and sometimes it is useful, but there is a catch. Taking those months can mean your ongoing monthly benefit is treated as if it started earlier, which can lower the amount you receive going forward compared with waiting longer. So please do not hear retroactive and say yes on the spot because it feels like found money. Ask them to show you the trade-off. How much back pay? How much lower each month after that? Sometimes the right answer is yes, sometimes it is no. The point is to make that choice on purpose. All right, let's bring this whole thing together in one clear message. The main idea is simple. Being born before 1960 does not automatically mean you are owed an extra $1,870 a month. But being in this age group does mean you are in the danger zone for missed Social Security choices, especially if you are married, divorced after a long marriage, widowed, or surviving a divorced spouse. Why does this matter? Because the difference between the benefit you are getting and the benefit you should be getting can be small, or it can be life-changing. Sometimes it is an extra $100. Sometimes it is several $100s. And yes, in some cases, especially with survivor benefits, it can be around $1,870 a month or even more. So what should you do today? Do not guess. Do not rely on a friend's old strategy. Do not assume the first number you see is the only number that exists. Check your own benefit. Check your spouse or ex-spouse options if they apply. And if there has been a death in the family, ask for a survivor benefit review by phone or at a Social Security office. One careful review can do more for your monthly income than a year of worrying. And one thing before you go. If you know one person who might need this, maybe a widow down the street, a brother who went through a divorce years ago, or a friend who keeps saying, "I'm sure Social Security already figured it out," please share this video with them. You do not have to scare them. Just tell them, "Watch this when you have a few minutes. It may help." In the next video, I'm going to show you the exact questions to ask Social Security so you do not get off the phone still confused. And trust me, the way you ask the question can make all the difference.